Well, the protest by organized labor against President Bola Tinubu's perceived anti-people policies intensified on day one, with protesters breaking down the first gate of the National Assembly, that's a NAS complex, and forcing their way inside. This was on Wednesday morning. The protesters then marched to the Assembly complex second gate, even as senators immediately entered a closed-door session. Now, the organized labor, including the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Trade Union Congress, TUC, and their affiliate unions, yesterday kicked off a protest in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, and other states of the Federation, including Lagos, Abia, Plateau, Kaduna, Kano, Rivers, Zamfara, Katsina, Cross River, Ebonyi, Enugu, Kwara, and many other states. The protesters in their hundreds convened on the Unity Fountain, from where they marched to the NAS complex. Well, the issues warranting the protest are definitely yet to be addressed. Still with me this morning in the studio is Nelson Ekujimi, and we'll be looking at these protests and what may come out of it, if it will be called off, because there were reports that that the protest might be called off. Well, Nelson, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So now let's look at when you saw the march yesterday, one that happened in Abuja, and the fact that they were barricaded with security presence at the National Assembly. And the ones that happened in Lagos, the protest that happened in Lagos from Ikeja along to Alausa. Now, how would you describe the entire process from the states that we monitored?
Well, I think the protests were forewarned, were informed about the protest, and we recognize that those group of people were going to have a protest, which is in line with their constitutional rights. But for me, what I find distasteful is the hooliganism displayed by pulling down the gate of the National Assembly complex. I believe that the protest was supposed to be peaceful, but when you go through that route, it means the protest was becoming something else. And then when you talk about pulling down, there was a barricade. I'm not sure I saw any barricade. You should recognize that the National...
locking up the gates. That's
you should recognize that the National Assembly has several, gates, and there are procedures. You don't say because you are protesting, then you violate procedures in a place. I've been to the National Assembly on a number of occasions. I've even gone there with groups. That when you get to the gate, to a certain gate, you are told for security purposes, because the National Assembly is a security zone. You are told to drop your phones, and persons will tell you, why should I drop my phone? This is a National Assembly. It is, and my admonition to them is that anywhere you get to, if you know you cannot abide by the rules, it's better you take your leave, because you are not forced to come there. It means you can't fit into the situation to the rules of engagement in that environment. So if you don't want trouble for yourself, it's better you take your leave if you cannot respect the laws of engagement.
So your point here is it was okay that the first gate. Now, don't you think that the fact that the first gate was locked is an indication that the security agencies were probably under instruction not to allow the protesters into the assembly? The National Assembly is a public place.
Absolutely, but the National Assembly is not a place for protest. There's a zone for protest.
Pardon?
The National Assembly is not a ground for protest.
So
it's an institution for lawmaking. You must get that clear.
And then we are the labor, the unions are there to let the elected officials know that, look, we need you to make laws and do things that will benefit the Nigerian people.
Absolutely, and there is a means of engagement between whoever is coming, not only the Nigerian Labour Congress or TUC, whoever is coming to the National Assembly to come and ventilate your grievance. there are procedures for interventions between them and the National Assembly, except if somebody has not taken that part before. Some of us, we are used to those line of engagement. So there's always this communication between you and the National Assembly. And when you do when you deploy that communication, in fact, by the time you get there, some members of the National Assembly would have been detailed to come and meet you at a certain spot for security purposes. Don't forget, the National Assembly is not only a place where we have legislators sitting to conduct government business. There are other institutions within that environment. So you don't say because you have a grievance and you want to table it before one institution, then you violate the rules. That's my position.
Let me ask you, what's your take on the protest?
Oh, absolutely, it's within their right, but I will never be a party to such protests because I understand the issues very well, and as a person, I've taken a stand on it. But for me to take...
As a person, Nigerians have been clamoring for measures to be put in place to alleviate the sufferings of the people.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a big man, so you probably have a filling stations that you just drive into and buy fuel.
No, absolutely not. I don't.
They give you a receipt that you pay.
No, I don't. Yeah. I don't.
but if you are a Nigerian living in Nigeria right now, you would understand that cost of living has skyrocketed and Nigerians are suffering. And government seems to be, playing with the issues, saying you would give a certain amount to certain number of people, and later you're reviewing that, and you haven't even come out to put things in place. You said you were going to bring CNG buses. That has not been done. And then there's another increase in the price of fuel.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
I think we need to get these issues very clear, logically and rationally. We should not run with emotions. One, I'm a Nigerian. Two, I live in Nigeria. I live in Lagos. Where we are this morning conducting this engagement is within the geographical expression called Nigeria, the country called Nigeria. We are not talking or we are not interacting from, maybe space or an environment outside of Nigeria. Then, another point is that this fuel subsidy, we must get it clear and educate our listeners, our viewers, what the government has done. I've seen some persons come out to say, oh, Labour was not consulted. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you saying? A budget was passed by the National Assembly in November, December 2022. And in that budget, the appropriation for fuel subsidy payment, which is a budget is a public document. By the last administration, the fuel subsidy payment was to end in June. So I wonder what type of information you want again. If something had been done in 2022 that was done publicly and by a public institution, and somebody is coming to tell you we were not consulted, I wonder the type of consultation they require again more than that. Then two is that, yes, the freeing up of the subsidy regime by the federal government, that the government is no longer going to subsidize, has resulted in the prices being determined by the market forces. Just like the prices of electricity by disco, just like the price of diesel, the price of tomato in the market. That is what has happened. It's not about government fixing the prices any longer. When the government was fixing the price was when the government was subsidizing it. And the government has come out clearly that even Mr. President had to address Nigerians on the 31st, if I'm correct, or 30th, I'm not too sure of my date. No, 31st.
Yes.
31st, yeah. And even Mr. President, in his presidential broadcast, made it very clear that I understand your sufferings. Just hold on, just a minute.
When you say
hold on,
a minute. Your suffering.
A minute.
Go ahead.
Mr. President said, I feel your pains. You can say, like you have rightly said, all fingers are not equal. But the removal of subsidy has touched every strata of the society. You can go out and do your survey. Go to Banana Island, go to Mushi, or go to Amukoko. talk to people, or we have various classes in society. Talk to people here at that level as well as people at this other level, and see whether people at that level are not feeling the pinch. Nobody is exempted from the pains of the fuel subsidy regime. But what we are saying here is that the essence of that policy is for a better tomorrow.
No doubt, no doubt. No one is doubting that. But when you listen to the president's speech, now the president's speech on the 31st of July seemed like it was to prevent the protest. And when the president spoke, he did not address certain issues that Nigerians expected him to address. The president talked about the cabal, I'm using that word loosely now, that have been stealing subsidy funds. Now, the way he made it sound is it still appeared like these men are ghosts that could not be touched. Now, the president did not mention anything about the fixing of the refineries, which is one of the things that NLC is clamoring for. If you're removing subsidy, fix refineries. If you say that we have saved 1 trillion, let us know where the money is going into, which the government did not say, which the president's speech did not address. Now, the president's saying, okay, private establishments have done well by increasing the pay of those that work with them, and telling Nigerians that government workers will soon have increase in salaries. Soon. I mean, we are looking at Nigerians are suffering. So the speech did not seem to address the pains of the people, or in your opinion?
Well, I don't know which part of the speech you listened to.
I listened to everything. Actually,
okay, you listened to it
from the beginning.
I think maybe your mindset was fixated on a certain aspect of the story, which you didn't hear. Well, that is a right of yours that you have exercised. But also, don't forget, at times we want to behave like ostrich in this part of the world, as if we have forgotten we are coming from somewhere. The former administration, we saw the investment they made with regards to the fixing of the refineries. We saw the foreign partners that have come to revamp the refineries. For any rational mind, what one is expected to do is to say, okay, because we say government is a continuum. Don't forget, this fuel subsidy policy was inherited from the former administration, which is one thing we have all clamored for. If the government has now addressed the Nigerian people, don't also forget that even before now, immediately Mr. President made that broadcast, that statement on May 29, the fallout was that there was a committee set up between the government, the federal government, state governments, organized labor, and private sector, and organized private sector. And this engagement is between those parties. What one expects is that for us to say, oh, government, what are you doing about our 4 refineries? What are you doing about our electricity? You are also aware that the immediate past administration had invested heavily in the electricity sector, of which we know the results is not magic, because it's going to be done by people. You don't expect that because government has said, okay, I'm going to give you palliatives, then you expect that tomorrow morning you wake up and they will put the palliatives at your doorsteps. There are processes. And when you talked about the government making promises, don't forget when the federal government made when they sent a request to the National Assembly for the distribution of 8,000 naira to 12 million households. That process had been kickstarted by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's predecessor, of which people tried to politicize it. But that government left it for the incoming administration. And when people started raising eyebrows, the government said it was reviewing it. I'm sure part of the pressure the federal government feels was that the state government said they wanted to take ownership of it. And part of the review was that distribution of 8,000 naira, it has now been taken off the hands of federal government and put in the hands of the state governments. And the state governments have been coming out gradually to address. We have seen Ogun State government come out. We have seen Zamfara State government come out. We have seen Lagos State government come out. What we should be doing, if we are not playing politics, is to say, look, Nigerians are suffering. There's no doubt about it. Nobody's running away from that reality. But for people to play the ostrich on critical issues of people's well-being for political capital, we must not allow it.
At this point, I would like for us to listen to take up the video of the NLC president, Joe Ajero, where he made some statements. Can we put that video up? Well, we can't hear it from, we can't hear the words from in here. We would like to hear everything he was saying in the video. All right, unfortunately, we're unable to, hear the words there. But, you saw the pulling down of the gate. Well, that didn't look good. That didn't look good. Well, some people are still of the opinion that if the gates were to be left open, there would have been no need to pull it down. Now let's look at.
That's not justification. You shouldn't do that. You are justifying something that is more of a.
No, it's
usually
not
justification.
No,
it's
not
justifiable in any form. That you get to somewhere and the owner of the people in charge says,
who are the people in charge?
The security,
the National Assembly
the security, it belongs to Nigeria, but some people are assigned to provide. Then let Nigerians go and stay at the gate of the National Assembly to provide. Somebody is there, an office is there to provide security. So you should respect that office. Okay, now they go to the National Assembly and they were addressed by senators. That's what normally happens. You don't say because you have grievance, then anything you see on the door you must clear it up.
Have been avoided.
Well, in what way?
The protest. Shouldn't it have been avoided from the get-go?
The people who were bent on going on protest said they wanted to go on protest.
The reason they said they wanted to go on protest was because there was another increase in the price of fuel.
I've just told. It's not a matter. It's not a matter of an increase. The government has come out to say we are no longer subsidizing.
Yes.
The price of this product will be determined by market forces. So what are you saying? It was the government that increased it?
Okay, determining the price by market forces determining the price of fuel. Is NLC now the market force? Because NLC is, as it is, a private institution.
Yes.
It's a limited.
Is NNPC the determinant of the prices?
NNPC, I beg your pardon.
Is NNPCL Are they the determinant of the price of?
Well, they dictate how much it is.
No.
But they have been.
They are the.
Why then haven't the NNPPCL opened the market in such a way that other companies can import?
But
That way, the price will be balanced.
I think we are speaking from the position of, is it lack of information? Because I'm aware NNPC publicly published it that people have been granted licenses to bring in fuel. I'm sure you are aware of that information.
Yes, I am. But was that when? To begin when? When
immediately
exactly?
the government removed the price of subsidy. No, immediately the government removes. No, hold on. Let's take this. Look, this is a serious matter. This is not a laughing matter.
Yes, it is.
Because
have they started?
Yes, they have given licenses. Hold on, just a minute.
No, I need you to answer that.
Hold on. I don't want. If you need that information, you go and ask NNPCL management. I don't work there, but what I know is that as a public, watcher, that the government, the NNPCL, which is the body in view of the PIA law that we have in place, PIA law, has come out to say we have granted licenses to people to interest to go and import fuel, pending, because there cannot be a lull or there cannot be a vacuum, pending when the local refineries will come on stream, maybe the Dangote, maybe the modular refineries, maybe the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation refineries, the 4 Nigerian refineries. That, okay, because under President Muhammadu Buhari, I keenly watched the energy sector. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, the NNPC then was the sole importer of fuel. You know the reason? Because the private importers of fuel, were playing games in the industry as a result of the costs. And as at then, it was President Muhammadu Buhari that insisted that no matter the parameters that has warranted the subsidy, that the government will continue to bear it for social safety net. And that was what he did all through the life of his administration. So if NNPCL has now said, we have given the license to people to import fuel in the interim, I think it behoves on us to go and investigate that this statement that NNPC made, is it the truth or is not? It is not for us to sit down here and be insinuating.
No, this is not an insinuation.
It's an insinuation.
No, this is not an insinuation.
But NNPC.
Sure. Yes, NNPC said they were giving out the licenses, but then importation has not started. Now,
hold on. If NNPC has given licenses to people and importation has not started,
they have not been allowed to import.
Hold on. Just a minute. Don't let us.
Anyway, let's
let us clear this issue.
Let's go on.
You're not allowing me to.
Go ahead.
If NNPC has given a license to people to do ABC, in giving that license, there will be rules of engagement. The license will state terms and conditions. And part of the conditions might be, if you don't execute your own part of the bargain within X, Y, and X number of time or days, your license could be revoked or suspended, But because NNPC has given you a license to go and import, does not put the right on NNPC to tell you that you must import at all costs. You must bring it now. If you have gotten a license, you can get a license to run a TV station or a radio station or any other business. It is not imperative on the regulator to tell you when to start. But in the terms of agreement, it could have been there that if you are not opening in the next number of days, your license will be revoked and be reissued to another interested bidder. Because the process, I'm sure it was not done inside the coffers, inside the confines of a room.
Now let's look at the state of emergency that was placed in agriculture. The president declared a state of emergency in agriculture, and then grains were released. But these grains, would you say they have gotten to the people? Because I'm of the opinion that because the grains did not get to the people, and the people were still suffering, that was what prompted the breaking into NEMA warehouses in Adamawa and people cutting away grains because they felt they needed to eat. Let's look at this in line with what the government is doing to alleviate the sufferings of the people.
Well, like I told you, the government has announced the release of grains, and there are procedures for the release of those grains. That some people are engaged in criminality in Adamawa State must not be justified on the basis of hunger. There are lots of people who are more impoverished if we carry out a survey than even those that committed that. And part of the breaking into that, that store, they not only took away grains, they also took away, electronics and electrical appliances and what have you.
That was a
So
fallout.
are those part of the grains that they went there?
That was a fallout.
So that is a pure criminal act. It must not be justified. But like I told you, when government makes pronouncements, as the media, as civil society watchers, it is for us, to interrogate the process, to see where it is. Because when government gives this, make this pronouncement, it is not about government, going ahead immediately to say, okay, go and release the grains and start giving it to farmers. There will be a process. There are offices set up, there are checks put in place before this exercise is done. Or else, the purpose of that exercise will be defeated. And I'm sure that is what is at play. So for me, as a Nigerian, what I expect us to do is that these promises, these relief measures that are going to be put in place, that are being, promised, it is our responsibility to be the eyes and ears of the people to see, to ensure that these things are done as it is said. Because don't forget, when these grains or whatever are going to be reeled out, the distribution is going to be done by Nigerians. And Nigerians are going to be the beneficiaries. But for us to put people on their toes, we must inform them, we must make them know that, look, on this exercise, we are in it together because we are all feeling the pains. We will not allow only you to do it. We are here to help you. In that way, we will keep everybody in check and ensure that transparency and accountability becomes the watchword in the exercise of that responsibility.
All right. Lastly, on this part of the show, I know you move around in your own vehicle, so you probably wouldn't know a lot about what's going on in the commercial circles when it comes to commercial vehicles.
I disagree absolutely.
Excuse me, I'm coming somewhere. Now, yesterday, Lagos State government said that yellow buses will have a reduction in their fares, 25% a reduction, while the BRT buses will have 50% reduction in their fares. Now, I monitored it. BRT buses, yes, had reduction in their fares, but the yellow buses, owned by individuals who use their personal money to buy fuel, refused to implement that reduction. And we know that in Lagos, right now, a lot more people are using commercial means of transportation because most of them are unable to put their cars on the road because of inability to buy fuel. Now, so what would you say as to that policy alleviating the sufferings of the people? And what, in your opinion, is how do you think Lagos State government wants to implement that?
Okay, thank you very much. Based, like I've just told you, that part of our role as society watchers is to follow through whatever pronouncement government makes and send back our own feedback through the public space of the government. This issue of reduction in public transport fare, because we all know the role transportation plays in the price of goods and services. Goods have to be moved from point A to point B, and in doing that, you need transportation. And that transportation comes with a cost. This issue has become a topical issue now. As I sit down here, part of my own resolution was that today I'm going to, even though I've had the governor made that pronouncement. I'm going to go to the BRT corridor. I'm going to board the BRT bus. I'm going to see if truly, so that I can tell my own eyewitness story.
Okay.
I don't want people to say, oh, I saw it, and I'll say, ah, somebody told me. I'll say, I myself am a living witness. And also, after verifying that and asserting that claim, that promise that, yes, this is a promise kept, I will now go to the public parks and board a public transport and interface with commuters. How much was this fare before? Is it the same with? So, because you started this program by blackmailing me that I move in my car, as
And
if
you consider that a blackmail?
that's a blackmail, as if I live in mass. I live in a community where there are people, where we have the rich, where we also have the poor, and we interface, we discuss. I have a wife at home and I have children. They go to the market. My children enter buses. So even if I don't enter bus because I have a car or because my wife has a car, we interface with our neighbors. So take away
But
that
you haven't
blackmail.
observed. You haven't observed, so you can't speak on this.
I've not personally
Observed.
I've not personally observed, but I've observed the BRT. I've gotten the feedback. But for me to be able to speak, one of the things some of us do is that we go there ourselves to interrogate, so that when we are saying, I'll tell you, I'm a living witness. Then concerning the public transport vehicles, the issue with them now, from my own findings, is that that pronouncement on private buses in the public parks was made by the chairman of the Lagos State Motor Parks and Garages Committee or agency. I don't know how they call it. And what they have said is that the fees or the tolls that they collect on a daily basis from the vehicles will be reduced such that they too will reduce their transportation cost. But you and I know very well that we have a very disorganized transportation system, that this morning you can get to Oshodi to Abulegba, you can board it for 200 naira. By the time it's 6 o'clock, when everybody is returning from work, the transporters can hike it to 1,000 naira. We have a very disorganized system. That is the reality we should not run away from. But it is our responsibility as a people to now call on government at all levels to put in place measures that will ensure that the cost of transportation does not become, unaffordable for the ordinary man on the street. And how do we do this? By government investing in transportation through loans to would-be investors. I'm not saying government should put buses on the road, because we have seen government buses become moribund. We have even the Nigerian Labour Congress at a point in time had the Labour mass transit. Where is it today? It's gone. So when some people come out and become emergency activists, let the poor breathe, what they are preaching, they themselves cannot practice it. I'm challenging the Nigerian Labour Congress to come and give account to Nigerian people how they ran the Labour mass transit buses that they were running at a point in time during the fuel subsidy era of a previous administration. All the buses are gone. We can't see any one of them on the road again. So what we are saying is that government has to put in place the necessary infrastructure, and part of the infrastructure is to provide soft loans. If the government can provide soft loans, a lot of persons want to, just like the Lagos State government has even done with a lag ride. This vehicle costs 7 million. Come and take it for maybe 1 million initial payment. Then we spread the payments for you. So, and government also has a duty to ensure that the roads are free through fixing of the roads, changing the attitude of our people. You go on our roads, a lot of times why we have this hike in transportation costs is because of the heavy traffic we have in the evenings, where people behave indiscriminately in parking their vehicles on the road to pick passengers and to drop passengers. If people obey the rules, obey traffic rules, our roads will be free. Then we won't have this tension when people are going to work in the morning where everybody's on the road. If we all maintain that, look, my right to the road is also as equally important as the right of the other person. Then, some of these problems, we will eliminate them.
All right, thank you very much, Nelson Kujimi, public affairs commentator. We'll go on, we'll take a little break. When we come back, we'll touch on this, another topic, which is on the Lagos state government starting investigation into the abrupt end of life of Dr. Vuaredia. So, but many have already reached the conclusion that the state government itself is culpable. Well, it's not for us to say. Let's talk about this in a moment. And Nelson will stay with us for this one. Thank you once again, Nelson.
Thank you.
VOP this morning, we'll be back in a bit.